Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 7 articles in 2 different sections. In the analysis part, we'll first have a comprehensive discussion with respect to the serious public health issue of malnutrition in the country, its consequences, associated challenges, and the way forward. Then, in the second article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the meaning of linguistic secularism, its challenges, and the way forward for India. Then, in the simplified section, we'll have a look at 5 different articles from a special perspective of UPSC Prelims 2025 along with the value addition. So stay tuned. So coming to the very first article of the day, this is with respect to hidden hunger, that is malnutrition in India. See, we all know that malnutrition is a very serious public health concern, and it is a result of complex interplay of various factors, be it the social factors, the economic factors, the cultural factors, and it has implications on the growth and development of the individual, ultimately that of the nation. Now, in this very particular article, the author has said that in the budget 25, the government is coming up with the higher allocations for 2 very specific schemes, which are targeting the malnutrition. The very first is Saksham Anganwadi, and the second is Poshan 2.0. But the question which the author is asking is that will this fix India's nutrition challenge? And also the author has given some of the way forward, which I have tried to incorporate in today's discussion. See, what we'll do is we'll first have a comprehensive look as to what malnutrition is all about, what is the status at the global level in India, what are its consequences, the associated challenges, and the way forward, right? So let's start. And this forms the part of GS1, Women, and GS2, Health and Vulnerable sections. Now, what do we mean by malnutrition? See, if you go by the definition provided by the World Health Organization, it says that malnutrition refers to the deficiencies, the excesses, or the imbalances in the overall nutrient in the foods, right? Now, this ultimately results into what? It results into the suboptimal health status of the individual, right? So what we are talking about is it can either refer to the deficiencies, or it can refer to the excesses, or it can refer to the imbalances with respect to the energy and nutrients in a human's body, which are really vital for the overall growth and development. Now, what are the different types of malnutrition? See, malnutrition may refer to undernutrition. For example, we have stunting. Right? Stunting, what does stunting refers to? It refers to low height for age, right? So what it means is that it represents the chronic malnutrition. Or what we can say is that it can also refer to the wasting. Wasting, what does it refer to? It refers to low weight for height. Now this refers to acute malnutrition. Also, we can have the undernourishment, which basically signifies the insufficient calorie intake. Next is the micronutrient related malnutrition. For example, a person may suffer from vitamin deficiency. Let's say a person is suffering from vitamin A deficiency, which can lead to impaired vision, low vision. Or a person can suffer from vitamin B deficiency, which can lead to beriberi, or vitamin C deficiency, which can lead to scurvy. Right? Or we can have the iron deficiency, which can lead to anemia, or the iodine deficiency, which can lead to goiter, right? So these are different vitamins, and on the basis of the deficiency of these vitamins, what it leads to different diseases. Next is obesity. What it means is that when there is excess calorie intake along with the sedentary lifestyle, it leads to the overweight and obesity. Now, if an individual has a body mass index of more than 25 but less than 30, he or she is termed as overweight. If that the same person has the body mass index of over and above 30, that person is termed as obese. Next is diet related non-communicable diseases. See, the issue is that many of the non-communicable diseases, for example, the high blood pressure or diabetes, or in fact the strokes or heart attacks, they are also a result of the insufficient nutrient intake. So insufficient nutrient intake is one of the primary reasons for these diseases, right? So this is how you can classify the different types of malnutrition. Now, what is the status of malnutrition around the world? So if I just give you the data with respect to what has been published by Micronutrient Forum, it says that 3 billion people lack all year access to nutrient-rich healthy diets. Next, it says that 2 billion people suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. 1 in 3 women of reproductive age suffer from anemia. Then 1 in 3 people is overweight or obese. Almost a quarter of all children under the age of 5 are short for their age or stunted, right? Next is a tenth of the global population, amounting to almost 82 crores, are estimated to be undernourished, right? So you can use this data while you're writing a particular answer with respect to malnutrition. Now, if I were to give you the data with respect to India, the most credible sources, National Family Health Survey 5. Now, if you just look at this particular infographic, what it says is that the nutritional status of children in India has barely improved in 2019-20. What we are talking about is National Family Health Survey 5 data. From the levels in the 2015-16. What was the National Family Health Survey 4? Now, just look at this. Children aged 6 to 59 months who are anemic, 67.1%. Just look at the number, the gravity of the issue. Children under the 5 years of age who are stunted, 35.5%. Children under the age of 5 who are wasted, 19.3%. Look, see, it has barely improved from 21 to 19.3 or from 38 to 35.5, right? Children under the 5 years of age who are severely wasted, 7.7. Barely improved from 7.5 to 7.7. Children under the age of 5 who are underweight, so it is 32.1. Then children under the age of 6 to 23 months receiving an adequate diet, so this is 11.3%, just 11.3%. Can you imagine? Now, institutional birth, 88.6%. Now, if I were to give you the data with respect to the anemic population, so we have 25% of men within the age bracket of 15 to 49 years who are anemic. Then 57% women under the age bracket of 15 to 49 years, they are anemic. 57%. Can you imagine? More than half of the total population of women. Then 31.1% in adolescent boys, 15 to 19 years, and 59.1% in adolescent girls. Now, this is a very serious issue. Now, we have another data. Now, this has been many times not seen in good light by the government. Now, we have the Global Hunger Index report. Now, this particular report, now first you need to tell me that who publishes this particular report. Pause the video and do write the answer in the comment section. Now, the Global Hunger Index it's basically a comprehensive tool which tries to assess, gives a particular value with respect to the nutritional status of that particular country, right? Or it can be with respect to the world also, right? So it is tracking hunger at the global, regional and national levels. Now, it primarily comprises of various components. For example, we have the undernourishment. Now, this comprises of almost 1/3 of the weightage. Now, this refers to the share of the population with insufficient calorie intake. Then we have child stunting, which refers to the children under the age of 5 who have low height for their age. Again, it refers to chronic undernutrition. Then it also has child wasting. Now, just see here that we have child stunting and child wasting, which are 1/6 and 1/6 component of the overall score, right? We have undernourishment, which forms 1/3 of the overall score. Next, we have child wasting, which says the share of the children under the age of 5 which have low weight for their height. Now, this reflects acute undernutrition. Then we have child mortality, that is the share of children who die before they reach the age of 5. Now, this reflects the fatal mix of inadequate nutrition and unhealthy environment, be it the inadequate water, sanitation and hygiene, right? Now, based on these values of the 4 indicators, the Global Hunger Index score is then calculated on a 100-point scale. What it actually shows is that if a country is near 0, it basically represents the best possible score, or if a country is near 100, it shows the worst. Each country's GHI score is classified by severity from low to extremely alarming levels. Now, if you were to just look at the data with respect to India, now India has scored 27.3. Now, it comes in the category of serious. Just remember, because in the prelims, we have seen questions coming from these reports, right? So the data is also very important, and who publishes the report, that is also important, the various components. So again, I'm stressing upon this aspect that we have one third share, that is with respect to the undernourishment. Then we have 1/6 share with respect to child stunting. We have 1/6 share with respect to child wasting. And then we have 1/3 share with respect to child mortality. Now, in 2024 Global Hunger Index, India ranks 105th out of 127 countries with sufficient data to calculate. 2024, Global Hunger Index score. Now, with a score of 27.3, it comes in the category of serious, right? Now, India's GHI score is based on the values of 4 components. So, what are these? What is the value? So, 13.7% of the total population is undernourished, right? Look at this data. Very important data you can also cite in the exam. 35.5% of the children under the 5 years of age are stunted. Then 18.7% of children under the age of 5 are wasted. 2.9% of children die before they reach the age of 5 years, right? So this data becomes quite important. Now, what are the consequences of malnutrition in India? The very first is health implication. If you have a particular child who is suffering from malnutrition, that can lead to stunted growth. And that can ultimately have a negative consequence on the overall physical development, on the cognitive development of that particular child, right? Next is weakened immune system. If a particular child is not consuming enough of vitamins or nutrients, then the body won't be in a proper capacity to fight different infections or disease, right? Next is micronutrient deficiencies, as I told you in the beginning. So a person can have deficiency of a particular vitamin, let's say vitamin A, can lead to low vision. Then a person can have the deficiency in vitamin C. It can lead to scurvy or iodine. It can lead to goiter. So different vitamins and nutrients deficiency can lead to different diseases. Next is educational consequences. See, if a particular child is not having the intake of proper nutrients, that would ultimately lead to the cognitive impairment. The child won't be able to absorb the information properly. There would be less in absorption of the knowledge, and ultimately it would affect the learning outcomes, as has been said by the ASA report by Pratham. So it says that the learning outcomes, one of the reasons why we have the suboptimal learning outcomes in these students, especially in the rural areas, is because of low intake of nutrients. Next is increased school dropouts. If the child would not be in a capacity to absorb the information, that child would obviously not perform well, and that would lead to the increased school dropouts. Parents would think that the child is not performing. They don't have the adequate economic capacity. So ultimately, what is the best solution? To take out the school from the child. Next is economic impact. It's but obvious. If you have a particular person who is suffering from micronutrients deficiency and therefore becoming more prone to different diseases or infections, that would lead to productivity losses. And ultimately, the economic potential of the nation would be at stake. Next is increased healthcare costs. If you have a particular person who is suffering from malnutrition, that person would be more prone to diseases, and that would lead to increased out-of-pocket expenditure, increased healthcare burden. Next is intergenerational impact. See, what has been found is that those mothers who are anemic, they are more prone to, they're more inclined to give birth to those childs who are themselves anemic, right? Because the mother during her pregnancy didn't consume enough of iron and other vitamins, and ultimately the child who is born, the child also has a deficiency in these micronutrients, right? So this creates a perpetuous cycle of nutritional deficiency. Next is long-term health effects. For example, maybe in the terms of the cognitive development, maybe in terms of the absorption of knowledge, right? Health challenges in adulthood. That person, if a child is suffering from micronutrient deficiency, definitely that particular child in his or her adulthood would find different issues, especially with respect to the health. Maybe some non-communicable diseases in the form of high blood pressure or in the form of heart attack or strokes. Next is social consequences. What we find is that the section of the society which is suffering the most brunt of malnutrition is the marginalized community, or that particular section which is economically disadvantaged, right? So what it leads to, it deepens the social inequalities in the society. Also, you must have seen that those persons who are suffering from nutritional deficiencies, right, who are stunted or who are wasted, they suffer from stigma, the social stigma and discrimination. This affects not only their physical well-being, this affects also their mental well-being, right? Now, if I were to ask you how to quantify this particular aspect of malnutrition, so the WHO has come up with a particular metric, what we call as disability adjusted life years. Now, this basically combines two things. The very first is years lived with disability or a disease. One of the reasons can be micronutrient deficiencies. Second is years of life lost. That is, let's say a person, the expected life years was this, but that person died prematurely, right? Early death. So what we see is that the disability adjusted life years, it's a combination of years lived with disability. One of the reasons can be micronutrient deficiency and the years of life lost. Another, in the same case, we can have a particular reason as micronutrient deficiency, right? So just for your knowledge sake, I have provided this. Next is the national development. If you have major chunk of the population, major proportion of the population suffering from micronutrient deficiency, suffering from malnutrition, obesity, then what it can lead to is it can hamper the overall growth and development of the country, right? So it would lead to reduce human capital. It would retard, it would hamper the socio-economic progress of the nation. Increased healthcare burden would be there. So especially for a country like India, which has meager resources, limited resources, more of the resources would have to be diverted to the health. Right? And that is not a good sign, because we have other priorities also. We have competing priorities. For example, we have health, education, we have the defense needs. So if you have a major section of the society which is suffering from malnutrition, greater resources would have to be diverted into that particular area, right? So these are the consequences of malnutrition. Now, what are the challenges in handling the malnutrition in India? The very first is widespread inequality. See, India is a country where we have deep inequalities in terms of income and wealth. And because of that, the economic capacity of various sections of the society is quite low. And ultimately, it leads to the affordability issue. They are not able to afford a good diet, a diet which is diverse, a diet which has all the nutrients. So ultimately, it leads to malnutrition. Also, sometimes what we find is that it can lead to severe food security issues in the times of disaster. Let's say a cyclone has struck, or let's say because of the tsunami, or let's say because of the drought. Then it may be because of the conflicts, because of the socio-economic tensions among the society. Next, we have price fluctuations. So if you have the price of the commodity which is increasing, obviously a major chunk of the society won't be able to afford that particular thing. Also, according to our data, almost 74% of the population of India is unable to afford a good diet, a diet which is rich in nutrients, or what you can say is a balanced diet, right? Next is inadequate dietary intake and dietary shift. See, what has happened is, especially after 1990s, after we had the LPG reforms, there has been an increase in the overall disposable incomes, right? And ultimately, there has been a shift from diverse diets, from that of balanced diets, to more processed and sugar-laden alternatives, more packaged foods. And ultimately, see, you must have seen that these packaged foods, they're high in sugar and salt content. And obviously, they're not good for the body. And we have shifted from a very good diet, which was rich in the millets, for example, to this particular diet, which is rich in sugars or salt, which is obviously not good. And our dependency on cereals has increased rather than on millets. Ultimately, what it is leading to is deficient in essential nutrients. Ultimately, what it is leading to is deficiency with respect to essential nutrients in the body, be it zinc, be it iron. Next is poor sanitation. That is, we have inadequate water, sanitation and hygiene conditions. And ultimately, what it results to is increased pathogens, be it different viruses, bacteria or fungi, right? And ultimately, that increases the instances of infections. And it affects the absorption and utilization of nutrients. Let's say you have a particular person who is suffering from a particular infection. Definitely, his body won't be in a capacity to absorb more of nutrients, right? Also, we have the data given by the National Family Health Survey 5, which says that 69% areas in the country have adequate sanitation facility. So the rest, almost 31, they do not have adequate sanitation facilities. Next is lack of primary healthcare infrastructure. So still what we see is that even if we have these primary health centers or the sub-centers, they are not well equipped to treat or to give advice with respect to the malnutrition, right? So inadequate access even to the basic services, for example, immunization or antenatal care, it basically increases the risks of different diseases. Also, we have the WHO prescribed number, which says that there has to be 1 doctor for 1,000 population and 3 nurses for 1,000 population, the density. But in India, what we see is we have 0.73 doctors per 1,000 population and 1.74 nurses per 1,000 population. So obviously, there is lack of human resource with respect to the healthcare structure. Next is delayed and inconsistent delivery. See, what we are saying is that we have some of the schemes being implemented by the state governments. Also, the center is putting a lot of efforts. But again, what we see is that there is inadequate, inefficient program implementation. There is delayed funding, and ultimately what it leads to the inefficient functioning of those particular missions and schemes, right? Be it Poshan scheme or be it the other schemes implemented by the state government. And ultimately what it leads to the inefficient nutritional interventions. For example, we have the National Family Health Survey 5 data, which says that only 50.3% of children under the age of 6 were able to access access the different services in the Anganwadi. So just imagine, almost 50% are unable to access different services which are being provided in the Anganwadi. For example, preschool education or immunization or health checkups. Next is inadequate monitoring and evaluation. See, what we see is that we have the survey, National Family Health Survey, for example. Now, they are the surveys, first of all. They do not give us the exact picture. The second thing is that they are not conducted on a regular basis. They are conducted on a periodic basis. So we do not have the adequate data with us. There is the missing aspect of the robust data, and ultimately it affects the overall policy making and it leads to ineffective policy. So because of the assessment issues, we have ineffective policies on the ground. So these are the benefits of millets. You can just see that it is, first of all, gluten-free. Second, it boosts immunity, easy to digest, rich in antioxidants, support the brain development. So our dependence on cereals should reduce and our dependence on millets should increase. Now, what should be the way forward to fight malnutrition? Now, before we discuss the way forward, let's have a glance towards the initiatives by the government of India. So let's talk about the Mission Poshan 2.0. See, the first thing is that we have PM Poshan, which is nothing but a revamped version of midday meal, which focuses upon providing the nutritious food to the students of class 1 to 8, right, in the government and government aided schools. Next, we had the Poshan Abhiyan, which was basically launched in 2018, an initiative of Ministry of Women and Child Development, focuses upon the pregnant and lactating mothers and also the infants and the children under the age of 6 years. So it's a very comprehensive aspect, comprehensive mission. Now, recently the government has come up with this Mission Poshan 2.0. Now, it is trying to basically subsume the Poshan Abhiyan and also some of the sub-schemes which were earlier implemented, right? Next is the ICDS, Integrated Child Development Scheme. Now, this basically focuses upon the pregnant and lactating mothers. Also, the children under the age of 6 years, provides through the Anganwadis, we have the preschool education or the immunization or the health checkups, right? Next is rice fortification. So the government is also implementing the rice fortification in the staple foods. For example, the fortification with respect to the iodine or the iron or let's say the B12, right? Next is Pradhan Mantri Matru Bandhana Yojana. It's a conditional cash transfer scheme for the pregnant and lactating mothers who have one child, for their first child. Next is scheme for adolescent girls. It basically caters to those girls. We just studied that because of the the scenario, the social scenario especially in the rural areas, what happens is that there is a lot of dropouts of the girls. So it is focusing upon making those girls who have dropped out from the schools to come back and join the education system, and again providing them the nutritional aspect. Next is mother's absolute affection, again to basically enhance the breastfeeding, right? Next is Poshan Vatikas, what we call as the Nutri Gardens. So in Poshan Vatikas, what happens is that we can have the local production of fruits and vegetables. Now this would enhance the overall nutrients in the children, right? So this is what Nutri Gardens. So what should be the way forward? See, the very first is enhance fortification. Now, fortification is one of the most effective and the least cost method so as to increase the nutritional status of the population. So in a country like India, where you have the majority of the population which doesn't have the adequate economic capacity, this is one of the most economically viable method for large scale implementation. So this should be basically enhanced, more focused. Also, a learning can be taken from the National Iodine Deficiency Disorder Control Program, which basically ultimately resulted into the less instances of goiter, right? Next is the focus social behavioral campaigns. So what we are trying to say is that like we had the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, where it was made a social behavioral campaign, there's a need to convert this particular eradication of malnutrition as a social behavioral aspect, right? So we need to focus upon different nudge programs. We need to nudge people to adopt more diverse diet, transcending or basically removing those processed foods and having more diverse diet. For example, our dependence on millets should increase. And also in this particular editorial, the author has given the importance to the information, education and communication campaigns. And over here, what she has said is that there is a dire need to involve the local elites or community in this particular aspect. Because as it was witnessed in 1990s in China, that we had the smallpox eradication. Over there, the local elites, the local community played a very important role. So this is what is needed. Enhance healthcare infrastructure. What the author says in the editorial is that there's a need for robust local delivery systems. Especially, she's asking to enhance the health and wellness centers. Focus upon the urban areas. Generally, what we see is we always tend to focus upon the rural areas. But what she is saying is, what the author is saying is that we also need to focus upon these urban places, right? Where there is a great chunk of population which is suffering from nutritional deficiency. Nutritional staff should be increased. Enhanced training should be given to the healthcare professionals. Next, as highlighted by the National Healthcare Policy, there has to be an increase in the overall public health expenditure, right, from 1.2% of GDP to 2.5% of GDP. And again, the focus has to be on the grassroots. We have to make these primary health centers, the sub-centers, the center of eradicating the malnutrition, right, and providing the adequate advice. Next is, we need adequate monitoring and evaluation system. So there can be a proper assessment, there can be a robust data, and ultimately we can have better nutritional interventions. For example, we have Portion Tracker, which is basically giving a real-time monitoring of those malnourished children. Very important. Consumption of locally nutritious food. Very, very important. So what the author in the article has said, that we need to focus upon the local cuisines. We are adopting more of Chinese and American foods. That should not be there. We should go with the local cuisines, right? And again, we can again focus upon the Poshan Vatikas. For example, these are the Nutri Gardens, which can be a source of local vegetables and fruits, especially for the children. Next is communication strategies. So different strategies, be it the radio, be it the videos, or be it through the other means, there have to be adequate information, education, and communication campaigns. And on the basis of that, and also what needs to be emphasized is that these campaigns should be rooted in the vernacular languages, not just on a particular Hindi or English. They should be rooted in the vernacular languages. So what we are trying to say is that this is a very serious public health concern, and we need to have effective strategies so as to again realize the vision. What we have is the Sustainable Development Goal 1 and Sustainable Development Goal 2, right? Zero poverty and no hunger. In essence, we have to focus upon this aspect, because ultimately it is leading to the suboptimal results with respect to the economic potential of the country. So if we just adopt these strategies, definitely we can have a very, very bright future, and we can basically capitalize upon the overall potential of the demography which we have, right? So that's for this article. Let's have a mains practice question. The question says, malnutrition in India is a multidimensional challenge that goes beyond food insecurity to include socio-cultural, economic, and lifestyle factors. Discuss the major causes of the malnutrition in India and critically evaluate the effectiveness of government initiatives in addressing this particular issue. Suggest a holistic approach to tackle malnutrition across all sections of the society. So do write 15 marks, 250 words, do write a particular answer on this question. Also, we have a question which was asked in this year's mains, 2024. Now the question says, poverty and malnutrition create a vicious cycle, adversely affecting the human capital formation. What steps can be taken to break this cycle? That is where you see the interdisciplinary aspects of the questions which are being asked. So you have the stress upon two aspects, the poverty and the malnutrition. Try to write a particular answer on this question. And again, if you're really liking the initiative, do not forget to press the like button and let us know through your comments. Let's go to the other article. So coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the very important concept of linguistic secularism. And I personally believe that this topic is really going to be very important for your mains. See, we have been witnessing the debates where many of the South Indian states are alleging that the center is imposing Hindi language under the garb of the new education policy. And this was elaborately covered on the Analyst, which we took on 23rd of February, right? So if you want, you can have a look. Now, here is this particular concept, which is linguistic secularism, which the Supreme Court talked about in a very particular case, that was the UP Hindi Sahitya Sammelan versus State of Uttar Pradesh in 2014, where the Supreme Court said that we need to basically adopt this aspect of linguistic secularism. And what it meant was that through this, what we would have is the acceptance of the legitimate aspirations of the speakers of different language. That is, we are giving due importance to the speakers of different language. We are not having a particular privilege with respect to a particular language. That is, all languages are given equal respect, right? So that is what the linguistic secularism is all about. We'll have a discussion. Again, this forms a part of GSU, Constitution, and Federalism. Now, what do we mean by linguistic secularism? It basically refers to that form where we give equal recognition and accommodation of all languages. Especially in a country like India, which is a multilingual society, where you have people speaking different languages. What is really needed is that we should give adequate recognition to different languages. We should accommodate different languages. We should respect the individual rights, individual linguistic rights, right? Again, what it would lead to is that there would not be any imposition of a particular language. So what the allegation has been from different states is that the center is imposing the Hindi language. So this would not be there if we follow the linguistic secularism aspect. Now, what it does is that it basically upholds the rights of the individuals and communities. What we are talking about is their linguistic rights. right, their linguistic identity. Also, in a way, fostering the national unity. So what we are doing is we are accommodating, we are having a non-rigid approach, we are accommodating different languages, ultimately leading to this particular framework where we are giving importance to national unity. And also, as I said earlier, that this particular aspect was specified by the Supreme Court in UP Hindi Sahitya Sammelan versus State of UP, where the Supreme Court very categorically said, this is a very organic manner, this is a very accommodative stance, and again, it involves a non-rigid approach so as to accommodate different languages, right? Now, what is the importance of linguistic secularism in India? The very first is that it protects the linguistic diversity. See, we have the recognition of almost 22 languages in the 8th schedule, which the constitution does. Also, what we see is that in India, we have numerous dialects. That is, if you just cross 5 kilometers, what you see is there would be a change in the dialect, right? We are not talking about the languages. We are just talking about the dialects, and they are thousands in number, right? If we follow linguistic secularism, what it would lead to is that no language would be actually imposed on the people. And ultimately, what it would lead to is that no language would then be marginalized. That is, if you're not imposing a particular language, it is but obvious that you're accommodating different languages. And it would lead to the non-marginalization. There would not be any marginalization of any language. Next is strengthens the national unity. What we are saying is that we are having these issues. Let's say we have the people in Tamil Nadu, some sections who are saying that there is the imposition of Hindi. On the other hand, we have some sections in the North Indian states who are saying that Hindi is really important. So it is leading to a quite conflict in the society. If we adopt this aspect of linguistic secularism, it can lead to a society where we have reduced linguistic conflicts, and it would foster inclusive nationalism, where we are giving adequate importance to different languages and we are making sure that no language is actually imposed. Also, we have certain constitutional values. For example, in Article 29, Subclause 1, which says that there has to be the protection of the linguistic and cultural rights of not just the minority, but of all sections, including the minority and the majority. Next, we have Article 19, Subclause 1, Subclause A, talking about the freedom of expression. Now, this freedom of expression also includes the freedom to express in a particular language, right? So we cannot say that you should only express in a particular language A or in a particular language B. It also includes the freedom of expression in a particular language. Next is Article 343, which basically says that Hindi as the official language. Please understand, 343 says Hindi as the official language, not the national language, which you should always remember. And this safeguards the regional languages, different regional languages, and gives equal importance to different regional languages, be it Bengali, be it Marathi, be it Tamil, right? Ensures educational inclusivity. See, if we give due importance to these local languages or these regional languages, what it would lead to is the increased instances of the mother tongue based education, which also we have Article 350A, which says that the state should try its best to provide the adequate facility of the instructions in the mother tongue, especially at the primary stage of the education, right? So that is really important. And this would ultimately lead to the overall development, the cognitive development of the individual, of the children. And it would then lead to better learning outcomes. Next is promote socio-economic mobility. See, what we are trying to say is that what we are seeing now is that there is the restriction based on a particular language, that for a particular job, you should know a particular language. If we give due importance to different languages, it would improve the accessibility to different jobs, to different educational institutions, right? Government services. So that would increase the pool of candidates, or it would give more opportunities to the candidates to apply for different jobs, right? Now, what are the challenges to linguistic secularism in India? The very first is what we are witnessing now is the imposition of a dominant languages. So we have different policies, for example, the national education policy, which many of the states in the South India are alleging that they are actually imposing Hindi language under the garb of this particular policy, national education policy, right? So it has basically seen a lot of opposition. So we have states like Tamil Nadu. Also, we have Article 351, which mandates the promotion of Hindi language. Now, many of the people look at this particular situation as an aspect of favoritism. That is, you are giving a privilege to a particular language. So this should not be done, right? Especially in a multilingual society like India. Next is regional language disparities. Again, the kind of support which languages like Hindi or English are receiving through the different jobs or in the educational institutions, publication of textbooks, the digital content. Other languages are not receiving the adequate amount of support, right? So what we are seeing is that there is lack of institutional support in the form of adequate funds. And also several dialects and tribal languages, they are on the path of extinction. Because see, we have very few speakers and adequate resources are not being given to basically preserve those languages, and it is leading to the extinction of those languages. Next is political and identity conflicts. What we are seeing is that we have the language-based regionalism which is growing. Be it some of the instances what we see in Maharashtra, or we have some of the instances in Tamil Nadu, or in fact also in North Indian states. So this is one of the aspects which is really concerning, right? Be it Tamil Nadu, Karnataka or West Bengal. Now this is a threat to their cultural identity. They perceive this aspect of imposition of a particular language as a threat to their cultural identity. For example, we have tensions in the Hindi versus non-Hindi speaking states, right? So over there in the South Indian states, we have people, some of the people, they're putting up the allegations that we are being forced to speak a particular language. On the other hand, we have some people of South India living in the North India. They're saying that we are actually facing discrimination. They're alleging that there are allegations. So ultimately, it is disturbing the whole atmosphere in the society. English as a socio-economic barrier. See, what we are trying to say is that for many of the jobs, what is really needed is that you need to be proficient in English. Now, this is not the case with majority of the sections of the society. People have not studied English, right? And you are saying that English has to be one of the requirements. So this ultimately disadvantages the non-English speakers, right? And also what we see is that it creates the rural versus urban divide. That is what we are saying is that in the rural areas, we have most of the people speaking their local languages. But in urban areas, you have still major chunk of the population who can speak English. So it is leading to the widening of the inequalities between the rural and the urban areas. Now, what has been the stance of Supreme Court on this particular issue? So we have the very first case of State of Karnataka versus Associated Management of Primary and Secondary Schools, where the Supreme Court very categorically said that when we are talking about Article 19, freedom of speech and expression, that also includes the freedom of speech and expression in a particular language. You cannot basically compel a person. You cannot say that you can only express your ideas or your beliefs in a particular language. You cannot say that. And this was basically inspired from a judgment of the US Supreme Court, that was the Peers versus Society of Sisters. In this particular case, the US Supreme Court very categorically said and very beautifully said that a child is not a mere creature of the state. That is, his educational choices cannot be compromised, cannot be restricted. The choices with respect to the education of a child cannot be restricted. A child is not mere a creature of the state. Also, we had a particular judgment by the Allahabad High Court in 1982, which very clearly said that Hindi is basically an official language. It's not the national language, right? Now, what should be the way forward? The very first is strengthening the multilingual education. There has to be adequate resource distribution with respect to the mother tongue based education. Also, what we should have is a flexible 3-language policy, which even the center is trying to do, right? Next aspect is promotion of indigenous and tribal languages. Adequate funding should be there, maybe through Ministry of Tribal Affairs, so that these languages which are on the verge of extinction can be saved. Next is ensuring the language parity in the governance. What we are trying to say is that different portals, different documents of the government, they must be in the vernacular languages so that the people can understand them, right? Expand the e-governance in the regional languages. Improve translation infrastructure. You must have heard about Bhashini AI system, right? Which is focusing upon translating a particular government document or a particular service in the vernacular language. So very important. Next is encouraging the linguistic harmony. See, language should not basically create barriers. What we should focus upon, that it should basically serve as a bridge for cultural understanding. For example, we are having different programs. For example, we have Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat, and under that we have Kashi Tamil Samagam, right? What we are trying to say is that we need to come up with more of such initiatives which can foster inclusivity in the society. Language should not be seen as a barrier. Interstate exchange program should be there. So what we are trying to say is that this concept of linguistic secularism, which has been highlighted by the Supreme Court in the case of UP Hindi Sammelan versus state of UP, that is the linguistic secularism, is really very important so as to accommodate different languages, so as to make sure that no particular language is imposed on the people, and then the people would have more opportunities. So this becomes really very important. Now let's have a mains practice question. Linguistic secularism is essential for maintaining India's unity in diversity. Discuss the significance of linguistic secularism in the Indian context and examine the challenges associated with its implementation. Suggest the measures to promote a balanced and inclusive language policy in the country. 15 marks, 250 words. Do write a particular answer on this question. So coming to the simplified section, we have the first topic which talks about the Trump's attack on Houthi rebels. Now, Houthi rebels or militants, they are primarily situated in the country of Yemen. Now, there have been allegations that they are backed by Iran implicitly or explicitly. And again, what we saw in the year 2014 was that they toppled the civilian government in Yemen. And now they occupy a significant large portion of territory in Yemen. Also, what you must know is as the atrocities committed by Israel, they started to increase in Palestine. What Houthi rebels did, they started attacking the allies of Israel, right? So be it the commercial ships of US. So they said, the Houthi rebels said that we won't allow any of those allies of Israel to pass through the Red Sea corridor. And ultimately, they attacked some of the US commercial ships. And therefore, the Trump administration has ordered to eliminate the Houthi rebels. This is what the story is all about. So we have the US President Donald Trump launched a large-scale military operation against Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis on Saturday over the group's attack on the Red Sea shipping, killing at least 31 people. Trump also warned that Iran, the Houthis' main backer, that it should immediately halt the support for that particular group. The strikes represent the biggest US military operation in the Middle East since the Trump took office. A Pentagon spokesperson also said that the Houthis have attacked the US warships 174 times and the commercial vehicles 145 times since 2023. The Houthis say that the attacks are in solidarity with the Palestinians over Israel's war in Gaza with Hamas. Houthis said that they targeted the US carrier USS Harry S. Truman with ballistic missiles and drones without offering evidence. Right. Now, what are Houthis? As already told. So the Houthis, also known as Ansar Allah, are an armed group that control most of the Yemen, including the capital Sana'a. So you can just see we have the Yemen, the country Yemen, and over here we have the capital Sana'a. So most of the area, it has been occupied by the Houthis and some of the western and northern areas close to Saudi Arabia. The Houthis emerged in 1990s but rose to prominence in 2014 when the group rebelled against the Yemen's government, causing it to step down and sparking a crippling humanitarian crisis. The group then spent years with Iran's backing, fighting military coalition led by Saudi Arabia. The two warring sides have also repeatedly tried to hold peace talks. However, the analysts say that the Shia group should not be seen as an Iranian proxy. Why? It has its own base, its own interest, and its own ambitions. So we cannot really see Houthis as Iran's proxy. Why are Houthis attacking the Red Sea ships? The Houthis say that their attacks on commercial and military ships are basically related to the Israeli atrocities or Israeli war committed on Gaza and Palestine, with potential Israeli links are primarily aimed at pressurizing Israel to end its war on Gaza. On November 18, the group took over a cargo ships called the Galaxy Leader, which they have since turned into a tourist attraction for Yemenis. So you can just see, we have this particular infographic provided by Al Jazeera. Now it says, we have Houthi rebels, we have Iran and other. Now we have the Suez Canal route, right? Over here, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now this can be really important for your prelims. The Houthis have attacked several cargo ships. Now this is Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, right? Do remember. So this is a very important infographic. Now the Red Sea and the Suez Canal account for 30% of the world's container ship traffic. And since the onset of the attacks, several shipping companies have said that they will divert their ships across the Africa instead. So let's say if you have a particular ship, commercial ship coming from Singapore to we have Netherlands. So initially, through this particular route, it used to take, via the Suez Canal route, it used to take almost 26 days. But now if the ship has to basically go to Netherlands, it has to basically turn around the Cape of Good Hope. And this would take almost 36-day trip. It would obviously increase the commercial costs also, right? So this is really important. Now, we have some other terrorist groups also, because UPSC has been in a tendency. It has been asking questions with respect to different terror groups. So we have Hezbollah, which is primarily in the country of Lebanon, right? Then we have the Al-Nusra, which basically operates in the country of Syria. Just have a look at this particular infographic. And then we have Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is with respect to the country of Somalia. Somalia. Do remember. So we have Al-Shabaab with respect to Somalia, we have Al-Nusra with respect to Syria, and we have Hezbollah with respect to Lebanon, right? So this is really important. Let's go to the other article. So coming to the next article, this is with respect to the declaration of Madhav National Park as the latest tiger reserve in the country. So we have Madhav National Park in Shivpuri district of Madhya Pradesh. Now this was declared a tiger reserve earlier this month. So the total number of tiger reserves with this, they basically go to 58. The latest tiger reserve, the area is almost 1,651 square kilometers, and it has 6 tigers including a cub. Now again, what this would do is that this would aid in the movement of tigers in the Ranthambore, Kuno, Madhav National Park corridor. Now, this is very important. So just see, we have the Ranthambore here, which is obviously in the state of Rajasthan, and then we have Madhav, we have Kuno. So this would basically create a good corridor, right? And this would basically increase the conservation aspects of tigers, and this would provide them a promising habitat. Although native elites in India had been hunting the big game for millennia, but it was under the British rule that the unprecedented scale of hunting and poaching of tigers took place. Even after independence, the big game of hunting flourished among the Indian elites and tourists. Now this gave an alarm bell, obviously, so it led to the declining tiger population. And ultimately what happened, that in 1969, the Indira Gandhi-led government, it banned the export of tiger skins. The very same year, we had the International Union for Conservation of Nature said that the tigers have come into the endangered species and the category of endangered species, and therefore resolution being adopted to put a moratorium on their killing. Again, then the government basically launched a task force with the chairman as Karan Singh of the Indian Board of Wildlife, and ultimately the recommendations of the task force paved the way for the launch of Project Tiger in April 1973, just after the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 was passed. This project was meant to last only for 6 years, but it has continued to this particular day. Now this was aimed at maintaining a viable population of the tigers and preserving their particular habitat, also so as to improve their conservation aspect, to improve their survival aspects. Project Tiger was launched with 9 tiger reserves. So we had Manas in Assam, Jim Corbett now in Uttarakhand, Kana in Madhya Pradesh, Palamau in Jharkhand, Ranthambore in Rajasthan, Simlipal in Odisha, then we have others. These reserves were notified in areas where the national parks already existed and were provided through a centrally sponsored scheme. The purpose of this reserve was based on this aspect of core and buffer, right? So the core zone, where the felling, grazing and movement of the people except those related in conservation activities was prohibited. So this was a very pristine zone where no activity was prohibited. You just look at this. So we had the core forest, no hotel, no village, only petrol camps and critical tiger habitat. And then we had a buffer zone where human activity was allowed, but it was limited. So this is the buffer. You can just see it is the buffer zone. After amendments to the Wildlife Protection Act of 2005 and 6, we had the institutionalization of the National Tiger Conservation Authority, the main implementing agency of the Project Tiger. For the oversight and the implementation of Project Tiger, you can just have a look. So NTCA is a statutory body under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Again, I'm providing this information because this can be really important for your prelims, right? Constituted under the provisions of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 for strengthening tiger conservation as per powers and functions assigned to it under that particular act. The NTCA conducts the All India Tiger Estimation. So who conducts the survey with respect to the tiger estimation? It is NTCA. Usually in cycles of 4 years. As per the 5th cycle of 2022, India has a minimum number of 3,167 tigers and is home to more than 70% of the world's tiger population. Now, again, India is home to almost 3,681 tigers as per the last numbers. Last population estimation released in 22-23. The big cats occupy almost 89,000 square kilometers of total area that is equivalent to the area of the country of Jordan. Now, tigers in India are broadly distributed across the following landscapes. So we have certain specific landscapes. The very first is Shivalik Hills and Gangetic Plains. So you can just see Shivalik Hills and Gangetic Plains. Then we have the Central Indian Highlands, Then we have the Eastern Ghats. Over here we have the Eastern Ghats, the Western Ghats, the Northeastern Hills and the Brahmaputra Plains over here. And then we have the Sundarbans, a very small area. So these are the very important landscapes. You can just have a look, quite important. Now Corbett with 260 tigers boasts the largest population. So that is in Uttarakhand. Then we have Bandipur and Nagarhole, both in Karnataka. Then we have Bandhavgarh, Dudhwa. Then we have Mudumalai in Tamil Nadu. Then we have Kana in Madhya Pradesh, Kaziranga, Assam, Sundarbans, Tadoba Andheri in Maharashtra. Then we have Satyam Mangalam, which is in Tamil Nadu, and Pench, which is again in Madhya Pradesh. Among the states, Madhya Pradesh with 785 has the biggest tigers in population, followed by 563 in Karnataka, 560 in Uttarakhand, and 444 in Maharashtra. A recent study published in Science said that between 2006 and 2018, the area occupied by tigers has gone up by 30%. Definitely a good news. Also, 6 crore people lived in around 45% of the area occupied by tigers. The study revealed that only 25% of the tiger habitats were in the core areas of the tiger reserves, whereas the buffer areas accounted for 20% of the big cats population. So you can just see, we have Madhya Pradesh having the highest number, then we have Karnataka, Uttarakhand, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. Keep a track of these numbers because many a times UPSC has asked questions with respect to arranging different states on the basis of the numbers. So just have a look. Now, what are the areas of concerns with respect to tiger conservation in the country? So as of now, there are 26 tiger reserves with more than 50 tigers. In the remaining 27 reserves, there are concerns with respect to the tiger density. For example, in almost 16 reserves, we have either no tigers or we have only male-only population. And these are, for example, in Arunachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Telangana, Odisha. Of particular concern is the situation across Telangana, Odisha, and Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, where the tiger population has either remained static or it has declined or even gone locally extinct. For example, just before a few days, we studied about this Satkosia Reserve in Odisha. So just see, we have the state of Odisha over here, and then we have Satkosia Tiger Reserve. Has no tiger as of now. So the research published in Science highlighted the poor socio-economic conditions, lack of political stability. These are primarily the reasons which are responsible for low numbers of tigers. Insurgency, pressure of mining, and competition for forest resources. So this is what you need to know with respect to this particular article. Let's go to the next article. So coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the Five Eyes intelligence body. Now, what is really important is that India is going to host the Raisina dialogue. And before that, what we are seeing is that there has been a conference of global intelligence officers around the world, including the countries of Five Eyes. So obviously, Five Eyes becomes important. And this particular conference also becomes important. Global challenges and intelligence sharing mechanisms, as well as immigration and extradition, were among the host of issues discussed at the 4th conference of Global Intelligence Security Chiefs hosted by the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. The conference is usually held a day before the annual 3-day Raisina dialogue. Very important. The top points of the agenda were counter-terrorism, Indo-Pacific cooperation, global challenges, global security and intelligent sharing mechanisms, immigrations, extradition and transnational crimes, narcotics, and organized crimes, other crimes. Around 20 countries were represented at the conference, including the US, Canada, Australia, and Russia. Now, this also included the chiefs of Five Eyes. So we had countries comprising of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the US were all present, though it was not clear if a separate meeting of the Five Eyes with Mr. Doval was in the offing. The conference is organized by the country's External Intelligence Agency, that is the Research and Analysis Wing, RAW, and the National Security Council Secretariat, which is obviously reports to, headed by the National Security Advisor, that is Mr. Ajit Doval. Now, talking about the Five Eyes, so we had in 1946, the United States coming up with the United Kingdom, who agreed for the unrestricted exchange of intelligence on communications of foreign information. Then what happened in 1948 was that Canada joined this particular alliance, and ultimately it was followed by Australia and New Zealand. So as of now, it consists of 5 countries. Very important. We have the US, we have the UK, we have Australia, we have New Zealand, we have Canada, right? So there are different agencies who are basically responsible for the information, and the code which is used by these countries is this: secret, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, US, eyes only. That is what the code is used for the transfer of information, which is with respect to the communications information around the different countries. This is what you need to know with respect to this article. Let's have the other article. So coming to the next article, this is with respect to the incorporation of Telangana's megalithic menhirs in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, this is going to be the second UNESCO World Heritage Site in Telangana. Now, you need to tell me in the comment section that which was the first UNESCO World Heritage Site in Telangana. Now, the Mudummal megalith menhirs in Telangana's Nayanpet district is said to be the second UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the 6 Indian sites to be added to the tentative list by the World Heritage Center in 2025. So you can just see these are the menhirs, megalithic, basically made up of stones. A menhir is a standing or upright stone that is usually tapered at the top. It is man-made in that it is sculpted and placed by humans. It is man-made, usually quite large. So we have, for example, the Great Broken Menhir in France. Just look at this. So this is what the Great Broken Menhir in France is all about. One stood at 20.6 meter tall. The term menhir is derived from the Brittonic main, which means stone, and hair, which means long, and entered the archaeological lexicon, the dictionary, in the late 18th century. Now, why they're erected? The very first is the ones in Europe were originally associated with the Beaker culture, who lived in the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, roughly almost around 4,800 to 3,000 years before. But the oldest European menhirs are dated to as early as 7,000 years before present. The ones in Mudumal are dated to almost 3,500 to 4,000 before present, are the oldest known menhirs in India. Menhirs can either be found alone or as a part of large complex of prehistoric megaliths, simply large stone structures. What is the exact purpose? So some are used, some people say that either they're used as the stones where people are basically buried, or some of them are used as for astronomical purposes, right? Likely served the ceremonial functions. Some were markers of graves, while others might have served some astronomical purpose. The Mudumal site has been described by the UNESCO as megalithic astronomical observatory. Some menhirs are aligned with the rising and setting sun during the summer and winter solstice. So we have winter solstice on 21st of December, and then we have summer solstice on 21st of June. So they are aligned. These menhirs are aligned accordingly, suggesting their use as an ancient observatory. So what we see is that these menhirs can have two purposes. For example, either they can be markers of grave, or the other purpose can they serve as the astronomical observatory, right? What we have in this Mudumal case. Over time, the Mudumal menhirs became closely associated with the local legend, one particular menhir being worshipped as goddess Yelama, right? So it's a quite static information, but again, can be really important for your prelims. Now, why do they deserve UNESCO recognition? Because they give the insight into the ingenuity, the intellect of the early humans. Not only do these tons-heavy stones need a deep understanding of physics to be sculpted and moved to precise locations, their placement indicates how much the early humans knew about the astronomy and solstices. So again, either they can be markers of grave, or they can be as astronomical observatories. So this gives the intellect, this gives information about the intellect of those early peoples. The effort taken to build these megalith structures tells us that they were undoubtedly meaningful to the people who built them. This in turn can help better understand the cultures that have no written material for the historical record. So this can shed a light upon the lives of those people, of those early people. So this is what you need to know with respect to this article. Let's go to the last article. So coming to the last article of the day, this is with respect to a very important statutory body, which is the Competition Commission of India. So we have the head of the Competition Commission of India, who has said that different companies are using artificial intelligence to basically collude. Now, this is a very important aspect. That what we have seen is that we are using AI in different places, be it commerce, be it health, be it agriculture. But this is one of the negative implications of artificial intelligence, where we have different companies through the AI colluding the prices. So now what the head of the Competition Commission of India has said, that the CCI should also basically equip itself so as to make sure that it can rectify these defects in the market and make sure that these activities of collusion with the help of AI do not take place, right? So we have the head of the Competition Commission of India saying that the companies are using the artificial intelligence to coordinate prices without explicit agreements and are engaging in the algorithmic discrimination under the garb of dynamic pricing. Through the use of artificial intelligence, we are seeing that there could be a potential way of collusion which don't require human intervention. So see, if there's a human intervention, definitely the Competition Commission of India can look into that aspect. But again, if there is no human intervention, what proof you have? The innovation in technology and emergence of new business models are happening at astronomical pace. At the same time, the regulations need to encourage innovation while ensuring that we have a dynamic and proactive approach in balancing innovation with competition. So what the head of CCI has said is that we have these pace of technological progress. It is going at unprecedented scale. But what we also need is that we need to have these regulatory bodies like the Competition Commission of India to come up with innovative policies, to come up with those policies where the particular body, the regulatory body, can look at the particular sector and make sure that there is no abuse of power, there is no abuse of dominance. Make sure that there is the spirit of competition in the whole market, right? Now, let's talk about the Competition Commission of India. Now, this is a statutory body constituted under the Competition Act of 2002. See, ultimately understand what is the gist. We have some of the players in the market who have gained dominant position. For example, take the case of Google when we talk about the internet space. Now, they might use their position for the disadvantage of some of the small players, right? For example, let's say if Google is not allowing a particular app to be featured on its Play Store. So that can be a case, right? So this amounts to violation of the competition spirit, and therefore we need to have some antitrust bodies. So we have in India Competition Commission of India, which makes sure that the spirit of competition is maintained and the interests of consumers are protected. There is no predatory pricing, there is no abuse of dominant positions by different enterprises, right? So this is what the very objective of Competition Commission is all about. Serves as India's principal competition regulator. It was officially formed on October 14, 2003 and operational since May 2009. The CCI functions as a statutory body. This is important. Under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the Competition Commission of India was established in response to the economic liberalization of 1991 with a mandate to enforce the competition laws, foster a competitive market, make sure the interests of the consumers are protected, and prevent anti-competitive practices. Anti-competitive practices, for example, predatory pricing, or if let's say a particular there is oligopoly in the market or there is monopoly in the market, what we term these things as the anti-competitive practices. Replacing the Monopolies and Trade Restrictive Practices Act of 1969, what we call as the Monopolies and Trade Restrictive Practices of 1969, the Competition Commission of India aligns India's competition laws with the global standards following the recommendations from the Raghavan Committee. So it was on the basis of Raghavan Committee that we had the institutionalization of the Competition Commission of India. Again, what are the objectives? Preventing anti-competitive agreements, curbing the abuse of dominance, promoting a healthy competition, safeguarding the consumer interests, and ensuring the freedom of trade, making sure that there are free forces in the market. The market is not manipulated. There is no abuse of dominant position by certain enterprises, so that even the small players, for example, be it the startups, they have equal level playing field. They can enter in the market, and again, they can basically showcase their product or service. This is what the Competition Commission is all about. What it has said in this present article is that there are certain companies who are using AI for collusion, right? And then they are fixing the prices, which is obviously not correct. And we need to basically equip ourselves so that we can regulate such things and make sure that the whole market is competitive. That is it for today. I hope you really enjoyed the session. If you really like the session, do let us know through a likes and comment. Thank you so much. All the very best.